Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Beer Blather 209, which is now, hold on, it's not going out to the right place. Give me just a second. It's going to the wrong place in Odyssey, and we can fix this in a moment. Hold on. Yep, there we go. And in we go. For the Odyssey program, I believe they just missed the start, but it's okay because they're going to get it on demand. Everybody else, I believe, is not having any problem at all. So, good evening and welcome to Beer Brother 209. Not that World War III bullshit again. Oh my God, I said bullshit. Is that allowed in you, boob? I don't know. They're going to have to live with it. I'm Sol Montes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from Madrid. And boy, do I have some things to tell you about that. And right next to me, over there with the other finger, I keep turning myself around, is Thomas Victor, the only living expert in World War II, in World War One flamethrowers. God, this is like a throwback to 4 years ago when I couldn't get
and,
my
and
thumb
largest.
untwisted.
I am the
What?
most physically gigantic expert on World War One flamethrowers on the planet.
Yeah,
I,
and the smallest one too.
and the smallest one, exactly.
Yes, you're in the Guinness Book of Records as being simultaneously the largest and smallest living expert in World War One flamethrowers. And I'm trying to think. Living, it's kind of a redundancy because if you weren't a living expert, you wouldn't be here.
Well, it's isn't it sort of a convention to say that? Just in case people do get confused and they think you're talking to a dead body.
Yeah. By the way, let me see. I'm always there in full photos, huh? Hold on. I have a couple of people in the chat on Odyssey,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't have them. I cannot see the screen, and I don't know if they can. And no, they cannot. Hold on just one second. There we go. Save changes. And I believe they're in now. So hopefully, God, this has been an interesting start, don't you think? And now it's working. Okay, sorry about that, folks. You're in. Don't worry. We're going to resolve this later or not. Who cares? There's so much I can do from out here. And let's go back to the beginning then, since now the people in Odyssey finally realize that we are indeed not figments of their imagination. First spiel. We're coming live now, finally, after much false starts in our Odyssey channel. And the chat there is the only one we will be monitoring this evening. So if you want to send us messages on YouTube or Twitter and all that jazz, you know, never mind. Leave a message if you want. We'll get to it, or maybe not. But if you want us to actually read your messages while we're doing this, and maybe, just maybe, answer your question, put it in Odyssey. While you're in Odyssey, don't forget to subscribe and click on notifications. And God forbid, maybe even become a member of this channel. It's easy, it's one click away. Just click on join right there and pick your category. And for uh, $2.50 per week, you can get a bunch of programs, including some that are exclusive for channel members, and you get beer blather on Saturdays. Uh, and of course, the wonderful fuzzy feeling of knowing you're doing the right thing. If you can't do this yet because maybe a latte a month is too much, then you can click on support and send whatever amount you feel like to the channel, or the dollar sign, and you can send a donation through the chat that we all can see so we can celebrate you. If none of this is to your satisfaction, you can always go to quodverum.com slash support us. Quodverum.com slash support us. This thing over here. And you can help us with both this channel and the social media site, which I believe to this day is the only one where sane people can speak their minds freely. If you are a troll, don't bother. If you're a bot, we'll knock you off before you can say peep. If you are a sane person, then you're going to be here for years and years and years, and we're never going to censor you for a word or a thought or the way you express yourself.
Which
Yes.
reminds me, Twitter has brought back bans for misgendering. So,
Not just that. Yep.
so from now on, maybe we should just avoid the topic altogether because no reason to deliberately get removed from Twitter just to make a point. You know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you know that.
Yeah.
So
I have even more for you because, of course, we are going through Twitter in three timelines. And you know that they have limited me again.
they have limited.
This time, they limited me again in Twitter. For 2 days, almost nobody could see me. And it was all due to one twat that said something, answering the State Department and one of their anodyne statements. And that said something like, stop giving aid and comfort to terrorists,
Ah,
in reference to Hamas. Now, apparently, you must love terrorists in Twitter because if you say something that a terrorist might find offensive, they're going to limit you. It is the same cesspool it always was. If Elon Musk at one point represented change, I have a feeling that he abdicated and resigned his throne to the next woke cretin down the line. I cannot believe that misgendering is now a suspension-worthy event
well,
again.
it's reality, and you know, um, I don't think we're going to miss talking extensively about gender issues.
Nah.
I mean,
I may miss a joke or two
yeah,
about the I don't know, uh, beauty pageant qualities of our uh, health secretary.
yeah, and I mean it's totally inconsistent. I mean, whatever. I mean, I don't care. It's we have bigger fish to fry, so let them concentrate on that and feel
Yeah.
throbbing,
Yeah,
swelling.
my only problem, Thomas, and I'll be frank with this. If supporting Israel, if demanding that our State Department stop financing terrorists in Gaza, for crying out fucking loud, they announced today a new package of aid to Hamas in Gaza. We have Americans who have been held hostage since October 7. The same people who are holding American hostages have killed Americans Because, if you don't give a shit about anybody else, good, the State Department is not responsible for that. But for the Americans, they are. And to continue to finance a terrorist organization that kills Americans, that takes Americans hostage, who has presently American hostages in their hands, is beyond asinine, is cretinous, and I will never shut up on that issue.
Well, I mean, we know who Biden is. We know who the State Department is run by, and they are by nature Israel haters, and they're going to do everything in their
Oh, yeah.
power. I mean, they can give as much aid as they want to Hamas. It's not going to matter. The Israelis announced today that they found Sinwar's escape tunnel into Egypt. So
Yeah.
he's waiting for the ground invasion of Rafah to begin, and he's going to skedaddle into Egypt. But we'll just see about that. The Egyptian army is on the border.
I'll bet you 10 to 1 Al-Sisi doesn't want him any more than we do.
No, and the Egyptian army is on the border, right across from Rafah. So they're obviously going to be coordinating with the Israelis. I mean, we're just this weird laughing stock. I mean, we've got a fleet in the Red Sea. We're not using them. The Houthis are basically operating unhindered. But we knew this was. I mean, we knew this was coming because Biden is owned by the Iranian mullahs. So he had to be dragged into supporting Ukraine, and he basically supported Israel unreservedly for about 3 seconds, and then he's
For about 3 seconds. That long, huh?
well, he's whining incessantly about how they're. Hi, are you there? Are you there?
Yep.
Okay, he's whining incessantly about how the Israelis are going. What does he say? He has some phrase that he uses. It's one that sticks in his rattled mind about they're going too far, or they're I don't know. But the Israelis just said either.
He did say literally they've gone too far.
Yeah, that's it. So the Israelis said today or yesterday or both days that they're not going to stop. They're not going to bow to international pressure. And
yes, and yesterday Hamas rejected the ceasefire.
yeah, exactly.
So that.
Yeah,
It was like they planned it,
Yeah.
The mental midget in the White House comes out with, I'm very confident we will have a ceasefire on Monday. And an hour later, Hamas said, comes out and says, no, there is no way, we don't want a ceasefire.
Yeah, the terms that Hamas was demanding was a complete ceasefire, a complete withdrawal of all Israeli troops from Gaza. They get to keep all the hostages, and they get money. And the Israelis, like, from what I heard, the Israelis said, well, we're going to leave the room and let you people think about this. And we'll come back in about an hour. And they came back, and Hamas pounded the table and said, we will not give an inch. And so the Israelis said, all right, enjoy the bombs, enjoy the tanks. No, it's I've seen combat footage. They're now cleaning up Khan Yunis, and they go into a house and they see a terrorist, so they just toss a grenade at him and then move on to the next house. And Hamas was never going to win this fight except without international pressure. But as you and I have talked ad infinitum, Hamas crapped in its own nest by releasing footage of the atrocities they committed. So the Middle East is not on Hamas's side. The Europeans aren't on Hamas's side. The only people, supporting Hamas still are the United States and France. And France has sort of kept its yap shut for a while. So it's down to Biden.
Yeah, every now and then they say something stupid. Every now and then they say something stupid.
Yeah.
But Egypt is building a third wall, and there is no way. The idiots in Jordan, who pay a lot of lip service for the Palestinian this or Palestinian that, will not accept a single refugee from Gaza or the West Bank. The Lebanese president is raising a flag and saying, "Hey, let's negotiate,
Yeah.
bomb Hezbollah, but let's put a limit to this. We don't want to go to war." Which, the problem is that these poor fuckers don't have any say in Lebanon.
Well, okay, despite everything, Hezbollah has not launched an all-out attack. And my guess is they're being screamed at by the Iranians, but what Iran is still trying to supply Hezbollah, and the Israelis are blowing up every shipment now. They're killing all the Hamas. The Israeli intelligence is stunning. They're locating individual apartments in Damascus where the incoming IRGC Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officers are located before they go into Lebanon. Yeah. They get a missile into their faces, and I don't know. It's the Israelis are handling this, and what people need to understand is the entire Middle East was watching this to see what would happen, because when this is all over, the Israelis are basically going to be the guardians of peace in the Middle East, and they're not going to. The good thing about the Israelis is that they don't have any imperial desires. They're not interested in the slightest with forcing other countries to do what the Israelis want. They're just interested in peace, and this is why Hamas launched this attack to derail the Abraham Accords with Saudi Arabia. It's going to go ahead 100% guaranteed, and Biden has done terrible damage to the United States that Trump, he'll repair, but he's going to go into the White House with so many things to fix. And luckily, Trump loves challenges, the more complex and hopeless seeming, the better. And so he's the man for the job, and that's why he's going to get it.
But what was it? The U.S. would never grow at 3% per year again. No, just the first year.
Yeah.
What was it that Obama said? When is he gonna pull a magic wand?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Abracadabra, motherfucker.
Well, where's the story is that Obama is running the show behind Biden, and it's like he's doing as great a job. It's really funny. Bill Maher is very stupidly inviting guests on who challenge him factually, and he's forced to say things like he had no problems whatsoever with the Obama administration. They made no mistakes. They were perfect. It's like you are such a dipshit. I mean, you are a dumb man. And he also just recently said that the country qualitatively is no different now than it was in 2018. I mean,
no, not at all. Not at all. It's just, well, I don't know. He may have a point there, because after all, the Biden administration has been pulling us back so much. I think we are now somewhere around the middle of the Obama debacle.
The
Uh,
first half of the
but
Obama administration.
right, I mean, think of it this way. People have forgotten how out of control immigration was under Obama,
Hmm?
how out of control the border was. Obama is the one who built the detention facilities for minors. There were dozens of thousands of unaccompanied minors every month. Trump came in, took that magic wand that Obama was talking about all the time. Or maybe it was just logical measures like you wait in Mexico until we determine whether you can come in or not, that kind of thing. And illegal immigration dropped to the lowest level in years. Biden came in and within the first week issued 90 executive orders that amounted to an open invitation to the whole freaking world. Come over, the water's warm, we're gonna let you in, and we're gonna even pay you. And now
Yeah.
people are surprised that in 3 years, 8 million have taken up the offer. Why the hell not?
Well,
I'm
see,
surprised it wasn't 70 million.
what's really another thing that's completely bitten the Democrats in the butt is that hardened criminals are coming in. That you and I have spoken about this, or maybe no, it was my brother and I. Um, Los Angeles is the center for a certain organized crime from Mexico, and the New York is going to become the epicenter for Venezuelan organized crime, and they're not Venezuelans are not going to. I know that one of the or two or maybe all, I don't know, the Venezuelans who beat the hell out of those cops were put on a bus to California.
Mhm.
Those guys aren't going to make it here. I mean, they're going to be hightailing it back to New
Oh,
York.
they were arrested and then released and then sent back to New York and then released again. Uh,
Yep.
remember the Marielitos?
Yes.
That's when Jimmy Carter got a into an argument with Fidel Castro, who could run circles around Carter because Jimmy, the Peanuts, was an imbecile, if you recall. And Carter fell into his own bullshit and couldn't get up. And promised that all Cubans who wanted to escape that awful regime, which of course was an awful regime, could come, and as soon as they get to the US, they're going to get all the paperwork done, and you're welcome, thank you, goodbye. In 6 months, 130 some thousand, which at the time was unheard of, landed in Miami. But of course, Fidel Castro had an iron grip on the island. Nobody farted if he didn't want them to. And most of the people who got on boats at the port of Mariel to come to Miami were the inmates of every prison in Cuba and every psychiatric hospital. So we had the worst of the worst of Cuba arriving in Miami. Crime rate in the 80s because of this went through the fucking roof. It was kind of like Scarface time.
Yeah. Yeah. And
This
and
is exactly what's going on with Venezuela now.
the only difference is that the Cubans were a lot more educated than the Venezuelans coming in. The Venezuelans are pretty much the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the sort of people who we want here. I mean, these are people who committed crimes in a country that has basically no human rights. And just to remind people, I was born in Venezuela. I lived there until I was 10. And things were bad then. But when you committed a crime, what they would do is they would take you and they would throw you into this giant, they called them prisons, but it was like a small town. And you were on your own. You had to figure out how to get food, how to get clothes, how to get everything. And these are factories for organized crime. And all those people who created the Venezuelan version of MS-13, they're all here now. So they're going to go to war against the Salvadoran organized crime, the Mexican organized crime. I mean, it's going to be bad, and these people.
We're making a Grand Central for cartels, aren't we?
Well, see, what the Venezuelans get their money from is hostage taking and holding people for ransom. So they have no qualms whatsoever about involving the general public, about victimizing the general public, because that's what they did back home. They're also involved in armed robberies and it's a nightmare. And they're all here, and they've arrived in a city that the policing is virtually non-existent now. So the cops are going to be up against the cops who've been trained to be to try and de-escalate and not target people unless they're of a certain race. They're going to be up against people who have no qualms about opening fire with automatic weapons, regardless of who's standing around. And, it's going to be a bloodbath for maybe a long time. Who knows? Because after Trump is elected, none of these people are going to admit they have a problem. They're not going to admit they were wrong, and they're definitely not going to allow any kind of help from the federal government. It'll be just like 2020 all over again, only now that was the summer of love where they burned down cities.
Yep.
Now these are all going to be foreigners. And don't forget the Chinese. The Chinese have opened their prisons too. So we're getting triad members coming in. Fun times are ahead.
By the thousands.
By the thousands.
By the thousands. Because this is something that Americans don't quite figure out yet.
But they will.
By the freaking thousands.
Yep, they will.
I don't know if we are a singular kind of stupid or what. Now, it's always the question with me: are these people more stupid than evil, more evil than stupid? Who cares? They're evil and stupid.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna try to measure both anymore. And it all started with this. You mentioned it last week, and I found it this week, and I had to bring it to you.
Yep.
Remember 3 a.m.? By the way, I do have it on tape because we had a quad meet where a bunch of us, Comrade Fudge and others, were watching the election results come in. And at 3 a.m., it was pretty damn clear who had won. Pretty damn clear. And that's when they stopped counting.
Right. And my brother
They stopped counting.
My brother and I watched that happen in real time, and we both knew at that moment that we knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. In Michigan, when they stopped counting in Michigan, Trump was 10% ahead.
Yeah. No, it's it's blatantly obvious. Okay, remember in 2016 when Trump won, everybody refused to call it. They absolutely refused to call it, and there were anchors saying, "Look, she has Hillary has no path to victory. We need to call this." No, 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 we can't call it.
No,
And
we can't. We're still counting. We're still counting.
no, you're in Pennsylvania. They were down to one county left, and it was going to go Trump. It already had gone Trump. But
Yeah.
okay, the everything is different now than it was in
In
2020.
in Pennsylvania at 3 a.m., it, Trump had a lead of 57 to 41.
Yeah, no, but
I
see,
mean, come on.
they prepared us. Remember, they told us that there was going to at some point it would look like
Yeah,
Trump.
don't trust your eyes because there's gonna be a blue pickup at the end.
They they prepared us by saying that Trump was going to look like he was ahead until they started counting the mail-in ballots. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what they did. And it's like, how do you know that the mail-in ballots are all going to be blue? It's like,
Oh, because you wrote it.
yeah. So, but what I want to point out is that everything's different this time around. Um, Biden is a disaster. Obama was up to that point the worst president in modern history, and now Biden is the worst. And Biden is he's made no friends in the Democrat apparatus. So there's
Uh,
going to be, I mean,
even Fetterman is running. Even
yeah,
Fetterman is running away from him.
right. And there's a theory out there that they're going to have Biden will drop out and they'll replace him with Michelle Obama. And okay, number one, she wouldn't win, and number two, she'd be out of her mind to go in because then the bad PR she'd get, the opposition research she'd get. So I see Biden not dropping out ever because what he does is he just denies any problems. He's got peripheral neuropathy. There's only one thing that we know of that causes peripheral neuropathy, and that's diabetes. So if he has unmanaged diabetes, that explains everything about cognitive issues. Because my father had diabetes, and he did not do anything to control it, and there were periods where he was on another planet. And we've seen Biden enfeebled and not making sense, and we've seen him having these bursts of energy and cognitive, clear-headedness. But Biden is, as Trump says, Biden is shot, and he's doing everything in his power to push away whatever people who could stand up for him. So that's completely different than it was in 2020. In 2020, he was everybody's decent grandpa, and he was going to bring
Not
decency.
mine.
Not yours, not mine.
Not mine.
No,
Not
I mean,
mine. We're gonna talk about 2020 a little bit longer later when we leave you boob. Um, but I wanted to remind people of something in the meantime. Remember when I had the Mushuachu? It was just at the beginning of the launching of Beer Blather, and then when we resumed programming, we talked quite a bit about the nature of Mushuachu, and we stated all the time this is nothing more than a flu. It's going to stay with us, it's not going to go away. It's going to come back every year, but it's going to be like a normal flu, and that'll be the end of it. I was surprised to find this today
Yeah.
from the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
They're only 4 fucking years too late. We knew this in April of 2020.
Yeah. I mean, just so everybody understands my own point of view, I don't believe for a second that the Chinese manufactured COVID and released it deliberately. I don't believe any of that. Definitely the powers that be used COVID as a an exercise, an experiment in population control, but it was a failure. California has mandated masks in medical buildings again, and nobody, not even the doctors or their staff, following it. Californians seem to be the only people riding alone in their car wearing a mask, but that's
there are imbeciles like that in Europe.
Yeah, and
some things are universal. You know what we underestimate all the time?
What?
Corruption, greed. For a
Yeah.
lot of people, COVID was a golden fucking opportunity to fleece all of us.
Yeah, that's what the teachers.
Yeah, the teachers. I mean, come on, they built us for 2 years.
Yeah.
And one thing you're going to find out in the next 2 to 3 weeks is the level of corruption in the Spanish government with the purchasing of masks and other supplies from Chinese through government entities. These
Yeah.
people got to the point of forbidding the use of privately acquired masks by hospitals so that everybody had to use only the ones that he, meaning the minister, that they in the ministries, in the government offices, procured, and they did so with enormous under the table payments.
Of course, the Chinese.
Enormous.
What's so bizarre about the Chinese is that they buy everybody, they get payments from everybody, and what the hell do they do with it? Their armed forces are crap. Their economy is crap. Their advancement is, I mean, they're going backwards now. What the hell do the Chinese, like, who is getting all that money and what do they do with it?
Well, she and a few friends. Listen, you and I are not going to be surprised that a fucking communist dictatorship is going backwards and cannot make capitalism work. It doesn't surprise you, does it?
No.
Oh my God. A free economy is not working in a gulag. Wow, no shit, really?
Well, also, he's following the dictator downward spiral. He's now purging everyone and appointing only toadies. And so, that makes everything even more corrupt and incompetent. Putin's doing the same. It's really.
You mean, I was going to say, you mean like this moron?
Yeah. I mean, for some reason, everybody's crapping their pants about we're going to be. Okay, Putin made some nuclear threats. They've provided no evidence that they have any of the weapons they're claiming they have. And apparently the people warning us they're still living in the 1950s because they claim that if the Russians launch their nukes, we won't be able to detect them until 2 minutes before they hit because they're going to go around the South Pole. And you and I both know that we have currently we have airborne radar platforms. Not only we, but every European armed force has the same. And the second anything gets launched from Russia, we all know about it. And apparently, the message has been passed to Putin. The theory is that Putin might use tactical nukes if the Ukrainians get to Crimea. And he's been warned that if he does that, then the Russian forces remaining in Ukraine will be obliterated by air. And if he launches nukes, like strategic nukes, we don't know what kind
He's
of.
gonna kill his army.
Well, I mean, that's the end of Putin. That his life is over. But we don't actually know what sort of missile defenses we actually have. A lot of this stuff is still classified. Remember the Switchblade drone that we gave to Ukraine? Nobody knew that even existed. It had been invented, tested, and put into production without a peep from anybody. And we don't know what sorts of anti-missile defense systems we have. So this notion that Putin is in control of everything and now we have to cower in terror, we don't. I mean, the Russians aren't in control of.
Let, let's talk about the kind of control that Putin has. They had a fleet of about 7 aircraft that are comparable in purpose only to our AWACS. These beauties. Remember those?
I
The
don't see it.
Ukrainians have already taken.
Yeah.
You don't see it yet?
Yeah. Okay, I see it.
It's on screen. Okay. The Ukrainians have taken down 2 of these guys. And what is the Russian response to that? They grounded the rest of them.
Well, okay.
So the one command and control aircraft that they have, it's freaking grounded. They
Well,
cannot fly them without their being shut down.
the Ukrainians shot down 2. A third will never fly
Yes.
again because of the damage it received in that attack. And a fourth was destroyed by partisans in Belarus who landed. They landed a drone on the radar dome, the radar disc, and set off the drone and caused irreparable.
Yes.
So actually, at least 4 out of the 7 have been destroyed.
Yes.
So
And now they want to keep the other 7 just for the inventory purposes.
the other
Uh,
3.
now, the thing I'm not going to comment at length over that bullshit that people say of Russia throwing missiles to the U.S. around the South Pole because it's tantamount to scratching your right ear with your left leg uh, in terms of inefficiency. Most of the silos of intercontinental ballistic missiles that the Russians have are in the north, in the not even the Baltic, in the Arctic area,
Yep.
in silos that are now practically defenseless because the troops that were guarding them are buried someplace in freaking Donetsk.
And guess who's
I
right
mean,
next door
yeah.
to silos?
Now NATO, courtesy of Putin. Putin couldn't leave with the Ukrainian border being a NATO border, bringing the US closer to Russia. Now he's going to have to leave with the Finnish border. This is like, screw you, buddy.
Yeah. And
In any case, up there in the Arctic, right next to Finland, is where they have the silos. And the idea is to throw them over the Arctic, because and over the North Pole, not the South one,
right.
which is the faster route. that gives Americans the least amount of time to respond in any way, whether it be to shut them down or to, let's say, launch uh, a counterstrike. But all of this, I believe, is moot. We know how well the equipment the Russians have been using every day works. In other words, it fucking doesn't. Their tanks don't work, their planes don't work, their ships don't work. I'm pretty damn sure their TVs don't work, and I know for certain that their Starlink terminals cannot possibly fucking work. What makes people believe that their ICBMs will?
Well, see, Putin made a mistake where he basically admitted in around 2008 that the Russian military was crap, but all that mattered was making people think that number one, that it was a great army, and that number two, they would use nukes if threatened in any way. Now, right after World War II, Harry Truman adopted. I mean, this is really shocking. Harry Truman adopted the doctrine of massive retaliation, and the Air Force. The doctrine said that if you do anything at all, whether it's an incursion or you know, giving us a hard stare, we're going to drop an atom bomb on your head. And a group of Air Force officers known as the Bomber Mafia, they basically took over the Air Force, and almost every type of aircraft was decommissioned. They said from now on, we're only going to need strategic bombers armed with nuclear weapons because everyone will fear us. Well, in 1950, the North Koreans basically dared us to nuke them by crossing the Yalu River and invading the South and almost winning the war right then and there. And Truman, he ordered the Air Force to drop a plan. Okay, we managed to push them back, and then the Chinese entered in November or December of 1950. And that was when Truman ordered the Air Force to drop a plan to drop 3 nukes on the Chinese. And the Army said, you can't do that. You're going to kill all our troops too. And we don't know what the ramifications are. You know, these are weapons that we can't use. And Truman finally saw the light. And at that point, he allowed, Truman had been telling the American public, this is not a war, it's a police action. And he deliberately did not allow our best weapons to be used in Korea. So at that point, when he was convinced that we couldn't actually drop atom bombs for an invasion because it just wasn't done. It wasn't
It doesn't serve any purpose.
Exactly. And so
it doesn't serve any freaking purpose.
Then
the only purpose of nuclear weapons is deterrence.
Deterrence. And it's okay, we had what are called 2 or 3 near misses under Yeltsin or whatever, but there was always an officer who refused to start firing off nukes. And the same thing would happen if Putin gave the order to fire off their strategic nuclear arsenal, assuming it works. All the oligarchs would be like, screw this.
Are you kidding me? We've been saying for 2 years now that if Putin actually gave the order, he would fall dead on the floor before anybody was able to act on it.
Yeah. And then they would say, oh, our great leader had a heart attack. And
poor thing. I think he blew an aneurysm of nuclear bullshit.
Yeah.
Putin himself is all over the map on this one.
Yeah.
He drops a half a word and everybody goes ape shit, you know, like Movie Time Blue says in the chat. Tucker Carlson, Reader, McGregor, Duran, all the assholes go ape shit. Ah, nuclear war, we're all gonna die, nuclear winter, that kind of shit. And then Putin comes back and says, well, no, not exactly. We're not going to use nuclear weapons first, but we can't say that because we need all the options open. Because we will also, our doctrine says that we will also use nuclear weapons as a last resort if our territory is endangered.
Yeah.
Have you heard of any plans to invade Russia?
No, of course not.
No,
The,
nobody is planning to invade Russia.
no,
Nobody is going to invade Russia. If
the
I
two
say, if Russia is invaded, we're going to use nukes, who gives a shit?
well, the two idiots who tried invading Russia, Napoleon and Hitler, lived to regret it because it cost them the war. I mean,
No, and Japan and China, because by the way, there are a lot of people who invaded Russia before, during, and after the Soviet Union. Uh, but by the way, to what purpose?
yeah, I
Why
mean,
would
okay,
anybody do that?
yeah, the Imperial Germans did it, and I mean, it just it was the Imperial Germans were so bogged down that they smuggled Lenin into the country to get him
To get a pass. Yeah.
and within
To get them into upheaval so they could walk out of it.
and they once the Soviets had taken over, they immediately signed an armistice with the Germans, and all the
Yeah.
troops on the Eastern Front were now moved to the Western Front. But
Yes. By the way, betraying their Western allies.
yeah,
Now, Putin is having the same kind of duplicity, you see. He's crying in the corners because he wanted to join NATO. Nobody's talking about this. I don't know why. Russia wanted to join NATO, and they were told to fuck off. Pretty much the same thing that NATO said to Ukraine up until 2 years ago. NATO did not want Russia or Ukraine or any one of these chicken shit countries with no real armed forces and corruption that makes Mexico look like the paragon of probity.
yeah,
And it
and
turned out that all of this crap is Putin's broken heart because NATO told him to shove off.
well, also, I mean, Putin is living. He's living in a 17th century or 18th century that never exactly existed, and
No.
um, I listen to the Times Radio, British Times Radio, and they have people on,
Yes.
and Putin is desperate. He's panicking. I don't know. I don't know what Putin knows. Putin famously does not go on the internet. He doesn't watch Western news. He gets all his news from Russian propagandists and his yes men who come in and say everything's great.
Yeah, but 2 years of everything's great and the fish is still unsold. To say that the fish is smelling by now. Look at this from British intelligence. You're gonna crack up. I don't know if Putin is desperate or not, but this sounds like a desperate measure. Ouch! 51 to 65? Did you see that?
Yeah, good luck. 65-year-old non-commissioned person. I mean, okay,
It gets better. They raised the age for officers, for commissioned officers, to 70. Non-commissioned officers to 65.
Okay, I'm six.
Recruiting age, recruiting fucking age for a grunt.
I'm 60.
55.
I'm 61. A Russian 65-year-old is like an
Oh God,
American.
he's your grandfather.
He's like an American 90-year-old. It's different in Ukraine. You see a lot of gray-haired, gray-bearded infantrymen who
Mm.
look fit as all hell. But the Russians, their alcoholism and their refusal. Well, they're starving. They're eating, potatoes and. But okay, the city of Bakhmut was taken. Prigozhin was in charge of that, and he recruited prisoners. The meat waves, the cannon fodder, were all prisoners. So he lost about 10,000 dead. To take Avdiivka, Putin has lost 16,000 conscripts and
Yes.
soldiers, not prisoners. And I just saw a video of two men who are from Moscow, and they'd been lying without food or water, waiting to be evacuated with their broken legs. And they ended the video by saying, if you fall for the propaganda and come here, then F you. You deserve what you get, just like we deserve what we got. So, and the Yakuts have risen up, and they're
Yes.
they're having they're having gun battles with. Oops, there goes Saul. There we go. The Yakuts are having gun battles with the Russian FSB, and the FSB is. I mean, they're not trained infantrymen any more than the Yakuts. Well, actually, a lot of those guys are veterans, so you could argue that the Yakuts have a tactical advantage. So, and then Navalny, the Russians sent out the word
Oh,
that
they
no
definitely do.
his funeral, and thousands are attending his funeral. So, I don't know. It's
I had a video for you. Hold on, let me see if I still. Oh well, no, I cannot show you the video until we leave
YouTube.
YouTube in a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, uh, I don't know if I showed you this. I'm here at Westminster Bridge. The building in behind me is the British Parliament.
Hmm.
And this is what it looked like on the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, yeah. You showed that. You showed that
I
on
showed you that? There you go.
you showed that on the last beard blather.
On the last beer brother from London. Okay. There is such a determination in Europe. 2 years ago, the Germans didn't want to send aid to Ukraine. They finally relented and they sent 5,000 helmets.
Yep.
The US wanted to send a plane to pick up Zelensky and bring him to exile.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the Europeans are beginning to exercise their troops for a potential ground invasion, or rather participation of European ground troops in Ukraine.
Yeah.
They're going all in because everybody know, and of course, what does Lavrov, you know, the guy who was tongue kissing Hillary Clinton over the reset bullshit,
Hmm.
he's still the Minister of Foreign Relations,
Yeah.
and he was saying this week how Moldova has to stop canceling Russians in Transnistria. We need to go there and free our citizens from the Nazis in Moldova. What the fuck?
Well, how are you going to get
Really?
that,
And
Rob?
number one, how the hell are you going to get there? He's not going to get there. Number two, bleeding moron, if you want to do that, You don't telegraph it because now the Europeans are not in a mood for this bullshit.
Well, I
Because
think,
if you confirm Russia's designs over countries other than Ukraine, at this point in time, you're going to have most NATO countries sending troops to Ukraine to make sure you can never do that.
well, here's what I think is a possibility. Now, as you recall, a lot of people took my possible scenarios out of, they ran with
Oh,
them and
God.
made me look like a raving lunatic. So what the Ukrainians are doing is they're concentrating all their energy on drone forces. And
Yes.
at the same time, NATO just announced that it's within international law for Ukraine to use long distance missiles on Russian targets, meaning
Yes.
Germany, send them your long distance missiles. And multiple European countries are announcing that sending troops to Ukraine is not out of the question. So, what may be the Ukrainians are constantly basically there's Ukrainian representatives living at NATO right now. Um,
Yes.
Zelensky got a lot of flack for getting rid of the army chief of staff. What the hell was his name?
No, it'll come up.
Right, because he'd done such a great job. Well, it turns out that he never rotated troops, so there were men fighting in one place for a year.
In Avdiivka for a year and a half.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't expect any human being to experience that. And so his replacement, the first thing,
Zaluzhny.
Zaluzhny, okay,
Zaluzhny.
Zaluzhny's replacement said the first thing we're going to do, we're going to concentrate on troop rotation, training, and improving our logistics. At the same time, NATO is saying multiple NATO countries now, France, Poland, Estonia, they're all talking about sending combat troops to Ukraine. So I think it's possible that there may be a plan for the Europeans to take over the 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 infantry and tank operations, possibly the artillery operations, while the Ukrainians use their various drones. Because, I mean, okay, they were given all these modern tanks and everything, and they use them brilliantly, but not enough. You can't,
Not enough because they don't have air cover,
and they don't.
which in about a month it's going to be solved. Um, there are already European soldiers
Yes,
embedded with the Ukrainian army.
yes,
We know that there are Germans, there are French, and because the German chancellor cannot keep his trap shut, through him, we know that there are Brits too.
and you and I, okay. Afghanistan was known as the Special Forces Olympics because every nation on the
Everybody, yeah.
their special forces there to get combat experience. And there's absolutely no doubt that Ukraine is the same. And I'm talking
Yes.
about Arabs, South Americans, Southeast Asians, because the Russians and the Chinese are the last big adversaries left. So the East Asians are probably going to have to get into a shooting war with the Chinese under Xi, and the South Americans. I mean, they're already in shooting wars.
I was going to say define South Americans for me because other than Cubans and Venezuelans and a few Colombians dying on the Russian side, there aren't that many.
Yeah, yeah, but what I mean,
And I don't think there is a fucking country in South America which has a single special forces operator that would have survived a half an hour in Afghanistan or 15 minutes in the Donbass.
Well, actually, the Colombians were training the Iraqis and some of the Afghans. So I don't know the Peruvians, the special.
That was before Petro. That was when we were taking Colombian soldiers to Zagreb in '92. Uh,
No, no,
and
no.
they were there to be trained,
Well,
and
but
some of those percolated over to Iraq.
oh, I'm
But
not talking about that. I'm talking about in the 2000s. We pulled out in
yeah,
2011.
in the 2000s, because we were training them to fight the cartels. Now the cartels are in government, and all of this is over. There are no longer anything in Colombia worth shit.
Well, I mean, okay, you can say that, but from what I know, there are active special operations units in
Mm.
South America, and they're not. I mean, they have relationships with the United States, with other countries. Um,
Mm.
the Gulf Arabs have relationships with a lot of South American countries, and you know, the issue is that these forces are not used. Okay, the presidents of these countries who are getting paid off by the cartels, um,
Absolutely.
they're not. It's a complex situation. So what I'm just saying is that I have absolutely no doubt that there are special operators from all over the world in Ukraine right now, and whether they're fighting
Yeah.
or observing or training or whatever. We Nobody knew
Okay.
the UAE was in Afghanistan for 10 years. That was finally announced, but they were there for 10 years, engaging in combat, and no photos, no interviews, nobody peeped. And by all accounts, the hardest close air support missions, when the A-10 wasn't available, they would give it to the UAE because they were so accurate that they could drop a bomb right on the top of somebody's head. They would take on the missions that no American pilot wanted to risk because our own forces were so close, and the UAE were so skilled that they were able to carry out these missions successfully. So there's forces all Singapore, forces you don't even think about, who are going to face the Chinese at some point, or the Russians, or both even, and who knows, maybe in the case of I mean, there's so many countries that are just write-offs right now, mostly in South America, like Mexico. Mexico used to have a reputable special operations unit in, the
Yeah.
Mexican naval infantry, and you know,
One of those special operations unit actually became the cartel, and a
yeah.
dominant one for a while.
Well, there's the video of the attempted capture of El Chapo was released, and that was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. There was the story is that there was a Mexican American Delta operator who was leading that mission, and I thought I detected a very slight American accent, but that
Mm.
was the naval infantry, and they had no idea what to do. They were standing in front of windows, and he'd yank them away. They were too afraid to go upstairs, so he had to go upstairs first. I mean, they weren't checking under the beds, they weren't checking up in the upper cupboards, they weren't checking in the closets, and most importantly, when he would ask how many men, no one would answer him. How many are there? How many are there? He was repeating himself over and over and over again, and I think it was called Operation Black Swan, and it was terrible. So, um,
Mm.
I don't know. Mexico is much. It's worse off than it's been in since probably
In a long time.
the Civil
In a
War.
long time. Lopez Obrador has done more to take Mexico to new basement levels than any of his predecessors.
I think so.
Mexico is it used to be a country of corruption, where at all levels of government, if there was a payment, there was a looking the other way. Uh, but he's turned the government into a coordinating body for the cartels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone beyond uh, uh, anything that we knew up until 6 years ago. It is the worst it's been ever.
Well, the Mexican defense minister was was basically an inside agent for the cartels. And
Yes.
when he retired and he was lured to the United States where he was arrested, and Lopez Obrador, this was the Obama administration, Lopez Obrador said that if he wasn't immediately released, then he would expose all the DEA agents in Mexico. So Obama released him, and when he went home, he was welcomed like a hero. And the guy got off scot free after spending 20 years giving intelligence to the cartels. And now the cartels are using landmines, they're using drones. Um, you know, Mexico is done, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yep. And if we have, as it appears we will have, Claudia as the next president of Mexico, my friend, there's nothing they can do for a generation now.
Yeah,
They're screwed.
yeah, they are.
They're screwed. Now, there is something that I can show you before we kick you boob out of this transmission. Um, Today, I saw this bit of news coming up everywhere. And since I was in London last week, it called my attention. Let me see. There we are. Apparently, there was a pro Palestine protest today over in Westminster, and the police had to create a ring of security around the Churchill statue. Now, of course, this created a lot of commentary, about the Muslims attacking the jewels of British heritage. But see, I have a problem. I still remember 2020 and the summer of our discontent. And I still remember what the Churchill statue looked like after the socialoid cretins from British universities had their fill of old Winston. Remember that?
Yeah.
They threw paint at Winston. By the way, on the other side of the square is Abraham Lincoln, and the same thing there. And they literally destroyed, not destroyed, but defaced the Winston Churchill statue. I happened to be there a week ago, and look at how defaced it is. Maybe, just maybe, the police thought that with the pro-Palestine demonstration, there would be a lot of Labour Party shitheads.
Of course.
that would do to Winston what they did in 2020. So they did the nice thing and surrounded Winston so that these morons can come and go and not leave behind work for the cleanup crew. This is not a religious thing. This is not a Muslim or non-Muslim. I fully believe that 80% of the people protesting against Israel are Labour Party members.
Well, I mean, just because someone wears a hijab at a protest doesn't mean anything. I mean, the prime minister of New Zealand wore a hijab after that
Yeah.
nigger shot up the two mosques. So the hijab is a symbol of politics, not religion.
Every woman in Washington, D.C. wore a hijab
Yeah,
after an asshole killed that poor Sikh florist after 9/11.
yeah. I mean, it's the problem with protests is you never know who's in it, who are, you know, there are agents, provocateurs. There are people who are just latching on to the protest. I mean, I have no doubt that the people demanding a ceasefire are they hate Jewish people and they are deeply in love with Hamas. But they can protest all they want.
Not
It's change it.
like Secretary Blinken.
Yeah, but it's not going to change anything. I mean, the Egyptians warned Israel that if they went into Rafah, they would cancel the peace accord. So Israel went in and killed 100 terrorists, and Egypt said,
Yeah,
"Cancel the peace accord? We never said that. That would be crazy."
dude, are you
So
kidding me? And actually, I laughed at it, and I think you did too, because that was like 2 weeks ago. It was ludicrous. The notion. I know, I was told by the uh, uh, Minister of Foreign Relations of Egypt 3 years ago something to the effect that Israel is our closest partner now.
yeah,
We could not operate without our collaboration with Israel. The man who tells you that in a private meeting is not going to cancel that peace agreement because of a bunch of assholes that Egypt has taken pains for years not to let into Sinai because every time they do, they fuck something up.
well, the Middle East respects strength and the willingness to use power.
Yep.
And the Israelis are showing that, I mean, okay, they've broken all the rules of urban combat. Um, Israeli casualties are incredibly low. The enemy, Hamas has
Dude,
got, they've got a tunnel system that's more complex than any subway system in a,
more complex than the New York subway system.
exactly. But
It's insane.
it hasn't stopped the Israelis. And they're using technology that they haven't even publicly unveiled yet. And finally, I don't mean finally as in, oh, thank God, finally, but as a final point to make, they're using what are known as combined arms micro teams, which I read a piece in 2018, I believe, in which an Israeli general laid out the plan to go from the revolution in military affairs. He called what's happening now as the second revolution in military affairs, which is the creation of strategic commando units. The third revolution in military affairs would be embedding those commando units with the conventional forces. And then the fourth revolution would be that basically everybody fights like commandos, except each of these micro teams has a tank, an artillery piece, an aerial asset at minimum, and then there are freelancing mortar teams, machine gun teams that are basically on call. And if you read, I watch war news from Israel every day. When they discover a terrorist, for example, in an apartment building, they'll have 10 snipers up at the top. They immediately call in their own personal air asset. The air asset is on station. It's following
Yep.
that particular micro team. They don't have to call the Air Force and say, do you have any planes to come in? They've got their own aircraft, and the aircraft
Yep.
responds within seconds, and it blows the hell out of those snipers. And
By the way,
we,
don't you love those videos?
yeah, yeah,
I do. I do. When you have somebody with that, firing an RPG out of a window, and
yep,
and before he can do the third one, something comes into the window and blows everything up. It's
yeah.
beautiful. It's effective, and it's not indiscriminate.
No, of course not. It's all targeted. This is what I mean. The last war that the Israelis fought with Hamas, the major war, was in 2014 with Operation Cast Lead, and because of what they had in their inventories, they were using a lot of dumb artillery rounds. Everything now is including their mortar rounds. They're all smart weapons. So the Israelis unveiled a new smart mortar that you could program to land on an individual soldier's head. If there's a brief collection of troops, you just fire your smart mortar at them, and the mortar can hit things that the artillery can't, because the artillery would have to basically fire straight up in the air. And
Right.
so mortar is used because of the arc in the round. And their artillery rounds are almost all smart by now. Their aircraft munitions are smart. So it's how every armed force should fight. And we've been trying to do it for decades, but all the heads of the branches of service say no,
Yep.
tradition.
Yeah,
So
or they're attending a diversity meeting right now because
exactly. But
the DoD lately, it's kind of ridiculous
here's
in
the
the
final
ways I
thing, though,
couldn't
that
imagine 2 years ago.
special operators don't want to dilute their specialness by having tanks and artillery and all of that, embedded with them. They have
Right.
to be special, and it's the usual American refusal to get with the program. We'll do it sometime in the future, but we're not ready for it yet.
No,
So
we will do it sooner than people think.
yeah,
We will do it sooner than people think because once the current bullshit dissipates, and it will,
oh of course,
for people who think we're going to destroy your armed forces with this bullshit. No, we're not. Uh, we're just going to create a little ridicule in the process. But by this time, 2 years from now, nobody's going to remember this, but as a momentary moment of lunacy.
yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, no, it's Biden, Blinken, these moron on steroids of Austin, people who are the butt of a joke everywhere, from China to Iraq, uh, and of course from DC to West Texas, uh, are not going to leave much of a legacy,
no,
except the laughter that we're finally going to be free to release once we don't have to worry about what these morons are doing today. Uh, they're going to
Also,
be gone. They're going to be gone, and the army is not going to be concentrated on how it can help its soldiers cut off their balls.
well, also, um, okay, in the John Wayne movie, The Cowboys, which is one of his later movies, he's threatened by Bruce Dern, and Bruce Dern says, do you want to fight me, old man? Because Dern was, I don't know, 28 at the time, 30. And Wayne says, yeah. And he goes, are you sure you want to do that? And he says, you're old. And he says, I am old, son. I'm 30 years older than you. I've had my back broke once and my hip broke twice. And on my worst day, I could beat the hell out of you. And that's the thing about the U.S. military. On our worst day, we could mop the earth with Russia and China. It's just reality. I mean, the Russians and the Chinese are ridiculous, especially now that their leaders are siphoning off all possible funds. I mean, a 65-year-old gets basically drafted to be a non-commissioned officer. I mean, that's insane. That's just
That's
insane.
insane. That's crazy. By the way, I see in the chat that our friend Faisal from Saudi has joined us.
Oh,
Assalamu alaikum, habibi, wa rahmatullah wa barakut. Uh, there we go. Uh, I'd like to be gentle with people who are great to us. Um, you know that I try to speak with our friends in Saudi occasionally because in the West we get no news through any medium
no.
that is worth listening to. There is a lot of stuff going on
Oh,
every day uh, that is not even mentioned around here.
big things.
Big things indeed. And he says, Habibi. So he still likes us, I can see. Um,
Well, we're like the only two Westerners on the planet who can see Saudi Arabia for the country it is. You know,
yeah, I don't know if we're the only two, but we're one of the very few. Uh, you used to say that Saudi was the most maligned country in the world after Israel,
unfairly maligned.
unfairly maligned, and by God, it's still true. It hasn't changed one freaking bit. First, everybody's anti-Jewish, and then they're anti-Arab.
Yeah.
What? Where do these people come from?
Well, they have no factual knowledge about Saudi Arabia. They don't know any of the history. They don't know any of the religious aspects. They don't know. I mean, they're just ignoramuses when it comes to Saudi Arabia. So they should just keep their trap
Yeah.
shut and not opine.
No, you know that I'm in Madrid, and once this area was part of a of a Arab Emirate,
Yeah,
and a lot of things entered Europe. Uh, let's say through the town of Hativa, where there is still standing a ginormous uh, um, Arab fort. Uh, Hativa is the first place in Europe where paper was made.
yeah. I
Did you
mean,
know that?
no, I mean,
We wipe our asses. We take baths. We eat with tools instead of our hands. We use perfume because of the Arabs.
well,
They
see,
taught us
go ahead.
personal hygiene and how to eat.
The thing,
Personal hygiene, how to eat, paper.
I mean, the thing is, you can't base you can't base your opinions about the present day on the past. I mean, it's everybody's different now. It's there were ideas. I mean, there are ideas today that didn't even exist in the past. And
Yeah.
when you apply a modern day, if you try to take the past and ram it into a modern day framework, then we all sucked. Every society in the world sucked
Everybody sucked.
in the 15th century, the 16th century. There
Yeah.
were no good places to live. They were all disasters. But
They were all disasters. Less than 40 minutes from here, they burned one of my great grandfathers uh, at the stake in an auto da fe.
yeah, I mean,
Apparently, not he was a Jew, but apparently he was a Jew in a business that the local cardinal wanted.
yeah, I mean, it's all about what people don't, what they refuse to admit is that human culture is forever improving, and it's not a straight line like this going straight up.
Yeah.
It goes
It's like the Dow Jones.
exactly like the Dow Jones, and
Yeah.
it's when somebody starts telling me about what the Muslims did, what the and it's like, okay, the Muslims are not. There's no such thing as a generic Muslim. It's like there's so many sects and sects
No.
within sects, and it's just stop talking about it. The question is who's causing us, who's causing
I'm
trouble.
I'm I'm waiting to meet the generic Christian too.
That's the thing. I mean, we the Catholics and the Protestants were at war with each other in Ireland until the 1990s. For God's sake,
They
it's
still are.
and you're right, they still
They
are.
still are.
Yeah.
They call it a truce. Eh, you know, if, imagine if everybody formed an idea about Christianity based on, I don't know, Jim Jones.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, what, I heard or I read, I saw a clip. I don't watch Joy Reid of MSNBC, um, but
Now I'm gonna have nightmares.
she had two guys on who've written a book about white rage, and it's about how white rural Americans are the greatest threat to national security. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
how many mass shootings have they carried out? How many bombings have they carried out? How many? And they were talking about these are they had these were middle-aged guys. They said we have the receipts, and it's like, oh, stop talking like a TikToker, for Christ's sake. Say sources. Let
They
the
can't.
kids say receipts. Say sources. Okay, so they're talking about a poll saying that white rural Americans are the most likely to have white nationalist beliefs, and it's like, what the hell is white nationalism? What is
Yeah,
that?
I want to know that. Maybe is the an expression of unrequited love for Whitey Land.
Okay, so why do these same people despise Joe Biden? He's as white could be. Isn't he one of us?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
No, 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 he's not.
he's not. Why not?
He's an alien from outer space.
Well, I mean, this is
No human could be that stupid.
they're going to go into the election. They've tried everything, so now we're back to Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a fascist, and
Of
he's a white
course.
nationalist. Blah blah
And
blah.
and and Trump is in bed. Trump is in bed with Putin.
With
Don't forget, it's
that,
coming back.
it worked so well in 2016 that they're
Phew.
doing it again. And
Yeah, and now that shifty shift in California is trailing his Republican opponent for the Senate.
yeah,
eh, He's gonna start talking about Russia, Russia, Russia again.
Well, what the hell was it? It just went right out of my head. But
Yeah.
the Supreme Court ruling now allows Trump to murder people while in office because the president is completely immune. And it's like, okay, they've agreed to hear the case. They haven't said anything about presidential immunity, and
Nope.
the presidential immunity has to do with things he did while carrying out his duties as president. The
Yes. In the
president,
performance of his duties.
right? No president is allowed to shoot someone to death in his office. Trump can't pull out a gun and shoot the Democratic Speaker of the House. God forbid. He'll immediately be arrested, and the vice president will call for the 25th Amendment, and Trump will be removed overwhelmingly by 100% of both houses. So they're lying about that. They have nothing but pathetic infantile lies to recirculate over and over again, and it's not going to work.
Kale is saying that I'm so white I could blind somebody by standing in my yard naked. Uh, I used to say that I'm fairly white, but since I've been in Florida for a couple of years, I kind of bronzed out. So in order to prove my white Aryan superiority, I have to bare my ass.
Yeah, I mean, it's white nationalism isn't an ideology. It doesn't exist.
No, it's stupidity in itself. There is no nation. Oh, you know what I think? I just thought of it because I was gonna say there is no white nation, and then I remember there were once 5 or 6 assholes who called themselves the Aryan nation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Where are they?
Maybe that's where these imbeciles coined the phrase. Of course, Aryan means literally Iranian.
Yeah, no,
So
I don't know. It's brainless. It's brainless, and at this point, they're screeching to a certain percentage of Californians, a certain percentage of Minnesotans. You know, none of this is going to matter to people who literally can't afford to buy groceries and pay their mortgage at the same time. They're going to be
yeah,
like, I'll take my chances with somebody you say is a white nationalist if he makes me able to afford living again.
well, if you can find one, because that's the thing, there is no such bird. If we took, they claim there is no Antifa. I wonder who the crap destroyed all of our monuments and burned down our buildings and killed 50 people in the summer of 2020 if, if they don't exist.
Well, see, the lies are no longer even plausible when they look you in the eye and they say, "You're not struggling to live. Everything's fine for you." I mean,
Yeah.
it enrages people. It makes them furious. And who
The
could?
State Department is now putting in social media that freight for goods coming to America have has doubled because of what the Houthis are doing. No shit, Sherlock.
Yeah, and you haven't stopped them. So
We've been saying it since October.
yeah,
Stop these assholes. And by the way, the Saudis did all they could to keep the Houthis at bay, with the constant opposition of the Democrats. Were eventually forced to, you know, call it quits. And the first thing the Biden administration did, right after they opened up the border to millions of riffraff from around the world and prepared to give Taliban the gift of an army and a country, uh, they took the Houthis out of the terrorist list.
Yeah,
They opened up the financial system so that the Houthis could rearm and refinance from Iran without any sanctions or problems. They could buy weapons anywhere. They could get donations from the friends in Europe and in America. And we essentially rebuilt the Houthis into somewhat of a fighting force. And then they start shooting ships in international sea routes, and we do nothing but sit on our thumbs.
yeah.
And now they're making the commentary this week. The State Department has put out all kinds of communiques. Uh, the Houthis are causing the freights to double, and that is going to make everything more expensive in the U.S. No shit, Sherlock. Today is Women History Month, and we celebrate the women of Afghanistan. Yeah, like you celebrated them in August of 21, you son of a bitch.
Are they standing with them too?
They had no fucking right to talk about them.
No, I mean the
If there
state.
is any problem with the women of Afghanistan, they have nobody but the U.S. State Department to thank for.
Well, okay. I'm not a fan of Glenn Beck and the Blaze, but the FBI just arrested one of their reporters for what they said
Mm.
was some form of misdemeanor, and he was told to turn himself in, and he'd be booked or he'd be booked and charged and released. Well, instead, they came to his house or his office, handcuffed him, and marched him out to the car and shoved him in the back. And it's like,
Yep.
and there's this legendary Rachel Maddow piece that she went into this long rant after Trump was elected, and she predicted everything he would do. Trump did none of those things. Biden did all of those things. He's going to weaponize
Yes.
the judicial system. He's going to use the Department of Justice to go after his political rivals. He's going to imprison reporters. I mean, it was hilarious because she claimed that Trump was
Yep.
going to do all these things, and then her little hero Biden is actually
No.
doing those things, and not a peep out of
But you know what? No, not a peep. And Mad Cow, among others, is now trying to threaten her audience when Trump is going to do that if elected again
Oh, she's
in
saying
November.
in?
She's saying it again. Now, you turn around and say, but that's what's good. He's going to weaponize the DOG. No shit, Sherlock. Too fucking late.
Yeah, I mean, it's no, I mean,
If he can, he's going to fire everybody there.
well, who opposes that? Let's see a show of hands. Who opposes Trump firing every single person in the Justice Department and rebuilding it from the top, from the bottom up? Who opposes that? Let's
Not
see a show
me.
of hands.
Not me. By the way, show of hands in the chat, and yeah, not me. Fire everybody and make sure that they or anybody related to them by friendship or family ties cannot ever be appointed to the new one.
No,
Um, Faisal is telling us that the Houthis just sank. By the way, I was looking at the satellite pictures. Um, a ship with 50,000 tons of fertilizer.
okay. Where was the U.S. Navy?
Jacking off, as usual, sending weather reports.
No, I mean, okay.
The
Look,
the Houthis just hit an oil ship. A fertilizer ship, by the way, the fertilizer ship, and of course now is everybody. It's an environmental catastrophe. So fucking what? Too fucking late. You should have done something 3 months ago. There is no reason. Let me repeat this, not for you, because you get this, but for everybody else. There is zero reason why the Houthis should still be able to fire a New Year's Eve uh, 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 rocket. Zero. We should have been done with them on day 4. And
Well,
yet, here
uh,
we are.
okay, I just want to make a point. In a democratic representative republic, the voters get the government they deserve. Okay, so everybody who voted for Joe Biden, all of this is on your heads. All right, you don't have any excuses. If you didn't know about Joe Biden before he took office, you're an idiot. Um,
Yep.
didn't know anything about Donald Trump before 2016. I had no opinion about him. I neither liked him nor disliked him. I only started researching him after the second GOP debate when I saw him start dismantling his opponents. And that really interested me. So I read everything I could about him. I watched as many interviews as I could about him that he gave. By the end of it, I was sure, 100% sure, that he'd be the best president we ever had. I started taking him very seriously, and you should have done that with Joe Biden. You shouldn't have just pressed the lever for Joe because he's decent. That doesn't even mean anything. That doesn't mean anything.
No.
Um,
But and if it has any meaning at all, it,
it's
by that
certainly
I mean
Biden.
the Oxford, yeah, the Oxford Dictionary meaning of decency. It certainly has nothing to do with this character.
No, Biden had a 50-year career for you people to look at. All right, and if you thought that Biden was going to be a better choice than Trump, then you are a brainless flop. And everything that's happening now, from the border to the economy to third world, literally leaf chewing savages, because that's who the Houthis are. That isn't who all Yemenis are. That's who the Houthis are. The Houthis are a politico religious sect who are basically the Shia Islamic State. The original Islamic was Muslim. This is the Shia Islamic State, but the Houthis do not attract any intellectuals. All right, they are leaf chewing savages. They if
Well,
you
they have a tendency to kill intellectuals anyway. So
the if you see pictures of them, they all have a round wad of cat leaves in their cheek. They're high all the time.
yes,
They're about as piously religious as a Satanist. So this is all your fault. They're holding the world hostage. The world's most powerful navies could wipe them out in an instant. They're not, because the current sitting president who you voted for is on the payroll of the Iranian mullahs. He owes them.
yep.
So the next time you vote, look into the guy's background. See what his political career is. Don't look into his personal background. Don't look into his marriages and divorces. See what he's done as a either a political figure or a CEO or
You mean other than become filthy rich?
exactly. No, good. I want Donald Trump. I want all my presidents to be billionaires because that means nobody can buy them.
Yeah, before they come into office. But I kind of dislike with a passion all of these assholes, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bidens, who were middle class, who claimed to have been broke when they were elected, and who happened to land fucking dozens of millions on what? A salary government?
Yeah,
A government salary?
Biden has an $18 million net worth that we know about, and he's got massive tracts of property all over the world. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
He's been on the government.
Not
Yes?
on a congressman or a senator's salary.
No, and not on a president's salary. So
Yep.
don't tell me about decency. Since Biden became president, my own investment income has been cut by a third. Now I'm hacking it, but I've had to stop. Okay, I can't build my principal right now. What I'm doing is I'm using the investment income to pay my bills, to pay my. I don't have a mortgage because I'm living in my parents' house. Um, but even though I'm hacking it, I can no longer do things that I used to do. Most importantly, I can't put income back into my principal to make my principal grow. So again, this is Biden's fault 100%. The executive orders he signed on the first day in office
Did this.
our energy independence and raised the costs
Yes.
of everything. It's all Biden's fault. So think
No,
about,
then they fucked up the logistics after COVID.
yep,
They fucked up the logistics. They fucked up the relaunching of our supply lines.
yep,
Anything from tracking to shipping turned to shit.
yep,
Not because people didn't know how to do it, but because the government made sure to fuck it up. Now it's fucking it again. And
exactly.
this time it's fucking it by allowing the how shall I, this primitive band of monkeys in Yemen to close the busiest trade route between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean and Atlantic. Why the hell would anybody do that? And because nobody trusts the son of a bitch. The
No,
idea of forming a coalition of America and European countries to patrol the Red Sea went to shit. So now it's everybody for himself, but there is no coordination. So instead of shooting the Houthis, they're shooting each other.
yeah,
A German frigate just took down an American fucking Reaper.
yeah. No, I mean this is how things are going under Biden. Absolutely. They're talking about how Trump is an agent of chaos. How? The world was the most stable it had been in decades under Trump. The chaos that Biden is the
Everybody won.
now.
Everybody won. Everything was going right.
Okay, something's happening. The Europeans are stepping up militarily to help Ukraine. North Korea, North Korea has cut off its artillery supply to Russia. Okay, North Korea was providing all of Russia's artillery and some of its ballistic missiles. They just cut it all off. No
Yep.
explanation given. Um, what's happening is everybody's preparing for the return of Trump. The Europeans know that the first thing Trump's going to do when he's in office is he's going to start making phone calls, and they are not looking forward to Trump's excoriation for not doing enough. So they're getting ahead of it. The North Koreans, they've
You,
been
you,
making
you mean Trump? You mean Trump is not going to sign off Ukraine to the Russians like the Democrats say?
no. What Trump is going to do, have he's going to have an attempt at negotiation, and the Russians are going to say we get to keep everything we've taken, and Trump's going to say, we can't agree to that. You have to leave. That's it. So my position is you leave or we start bombing the hell out of you.
Yeah.
And we won't tell the world that you'll get to say, I have seen the light, and in order for there to be peace in our time, I am withdrawing our troops after a great victory in Ukraine. That's what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
Trump had all sorts of those meetings where he never gave public deadlines. You have 48 hours
Mm.
to leave Baghdad. He never did anything that would take away the face of a world leader. And he'll do that again
But he in private he did it.
in
In
private,
private he did it.
of course.
I know that at one point he very nonchalantly told Putin that if he invaded Ukraine, because by the way, he inherited the situation in the Donbass and Crimea from the Moron, but there was a full-scale invasion in the plans as early as 18, and I understand that Trump very nonchalantly told Putin that if he did that, we were going to retaliate, and the first bombing raid would be the Kremlin.
Well,
And somehow Putin believed that.
you probably heard that the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal just blew the fact that the CIA has 12 hardened intelligence bunkers in Ukraine. You probably read that.
Yes.
Yeah, that was Trump. Trump did that. And those intelligence centers were vital in allowing the Ukrainians to put up, well, to basically defeat the Russians in the initial mass invasion. So the press won't dare leak things when Trump is president, but they're starting to leak things before Trump comes in.
Before
And
Trump.
it's of course it backfires because now the idiot voters think Biden did this. But everything's going to completely change for the better when Trump is back in office. And I'm not trying to appeal to Californians or just people whose brains don't function. I'm not trying to appeal to anyone. I'm just excoriating people who supported and still support Biden. I'm paying for your stupidity, and I don't like
Yeah,
it.
but by the way, folks, over in YouTube, I got distracted. You got a little bit longer. You want to see the rest of it of this? Come to Odyssey, my friends. Otherwise, good night.